Okay, so we have finally hit the finale of Watchmen Season 1, See How They Fly. This episode was directed by Frederick Toy, the only episode he's directed in the season. So the opening scene is actually us seeing now Veidt recording his message to Robert Redford that we saw Looking Glass watch earlier in the season, and it's really cool to see it from Ozzy's perspective. It was something, if you've seen my other reviews, I always just gush over seeing the big squid, and again, it was just awesome to see it here, but this time in its cage before it's going to be dropped onto New York, which is just so cool to see here. Like, that for me, just my fanboy part of it, is mesmerizing. I love seeing that squid, and I'm happy they didn't shy away from doing it again. But what's important here is that you see he's got these refugees as his staff, and we see the cleaning lady is the one who goes into his office, and this being in 85, I still love they keep true to the action figures on his desk of himself. One of my favorite Easter eggs. But we see this cleaning lady opens the picture of Alexander the Great, and we got vials of his semen going on here. And she takes number 2436 and puts it into herself and says, F you, Ozymandias. That was an amazing line. Like, she has such a distaste for this man, but she wants his genetic genes of his smarts. And you put it all together, and this is Deanne, Lady True's mother, who she has cloned into a figure almost like a daughter. So to me, just this whole opening sequence was some of the strongest stuff from the finale in general. So now this transitions to 2008, and we're in Antarctica, and we got Lady True coming to Veidt's lair, and she reveals to Ozzy she knows what he did with the squid and the brilliance she sees of it. And she says she's the smartest woman in the world. So that gets his guard down, lets her to come in. But she starts calling him out, saying that him doing these little squids is just him doing a rerun. It's the same idea 20 years ago, but just smaller. I think this is also Damon Lindelof putting this in here, just talking about the pressures of redoing something in the Watchmen universe from this super successful, famous comic from the 80s, and trying to kind of show that he has to put some of his touch on it as well. He can't just do a repeat because it will never live up to the comic. But she's saying, you know, that it's not enough just to do this squid thing and keeping the peace. She says, what if I can make every nuclear weapon disappear? And she says, you're just a man, Veidt, you have limitations. He thinks she's talking about her being a woman having more power than him, but she's actually talking about leading into her idea of becoming like Dr. Manhattan. Nice little line they threw in here where Veidt says to her, you come here thinking I can get in touch with him on Mars like I have some type of hotline, clearly planting the seed in True's head when she made that hotline phone booth to Mars. But she explains to Ozzy how she put together that Dr. Manhattan is on Europa, and in 5 years, her probe will be orbiting Europa to get a picture of him to confirm that it's him and that he's there. But really, we as the audience know it will be actually Ozymandias who is on that moon, with the sign being revealed in this episode actually to say, save me, daughter. Now, I know they put the D there in the save me D, kind of teasing you that it would be Dr. Manhattan, but people have their theories that it was daughter and that Lady True was his daughter. I just think the only nitpick of that situation is that I don't know who would actually write save me, daughter, and not actually write her name. That was a bit of a stretch for me, but so be it. But she reveals this whole plan to Veidt that she wants to destroy Dr. Manhattan, take his powers, do everything he hasn't done, and actually do good for the world. And this makes complete sense. I was saying this in my review about episode 7, that at the end, True clearly had intentions as well to get rid of Dr. Manhattan, just the way she was talking about him, about the phone booth, how he doesn't ever answer anybody's prayers. Obviously, I was coming from a place of anger. But she reveals to Veidt now that she's asking him for money and thinks she'll give him money to do this because she is his daughter. He's shocked at this. She explains what we saw in the open. And Ozzy just calls her mother a thief and offers her nothing. And I love the watch starts ticking here when he says, and I will never call you daughter, which we know will change to that convenient thing I'm saying on the moon where he says, help me, daughter. But fine. But the clock ticking works so well because this really is the moment that set everything in motion, a real motivation to prove him wrong and get her to call him daughter and show she doesn't need him. And like he says in this scene, do everything from scratch. So their brain operates in that bloodline the same way of that's their reaction to something like that. Like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong now. You've just motivated me more. So we go back to now to Ozzy in his cell on Europa, and another year has passed from when we last saw him, and here comes Lady True's ship to save him. And Ozzy leaves through this underground path he dug up with the horseshoe. I love that we got to see him in his outfit here one last time in all its glory. And it was just such a great nod to the comics when the Game Warden shoots him and he catches the bullet. If you haven't read the comics, what are you doing watching this? Go read the comic. But Ozzy kills the Game Warden with the horseshoe, and he says, the mask. Why did you make me wear the mask? And he says, masks make men cruel. So this will go into the theme that Will Reeves will talk to Angela about masks later on, which we'll get more into. And he says, I had 8 years to kill. Having a worthy adversary helped me keep sane. And the Warden says, was I worthy? And he says, no, but you put on a hell of a show. This just wrapped up Ozzy's storyline beautifully on Europa. And it really just showed you now that this whole story we've seen of Ozzy is basically like the play he was writing for Dr. Manhattan. This was his play he was living in. Like, same thing with the trial. That's why Crookshanks winked at him, one of the versions of her. That, again, it's all just a game to kind of keep his mind occupied and from losing his mind. And it's really him still just being the director of this whole story he's in and master. He's living in his own play. And I absolutely love the score here that they choose classical music to play during this. It just sounded perfect for the moment. It just works when they're putting his headpiece on him. Gave me goosebumps. And he gets now into Lady True's ship, and this is his return journey to Earth. But the system tells him to go into the preservation chamber and hands on the hip, please, which was great. So it explains why he's gonna be in that pose, because he's gonna be her statue. I love the gold carbonation. It's a great throw to Han and Carbonite from Star Wars. You know Lindelof's a huge Star Wars fan. And it's great to the idea of what we saw with Dr. Manhattan, where something's been in front of you this whole time you didn't even realize. But I did call out in my previous review, and a lot of people were saying as well, that that camera shot in a recent episode that transitioned directly from Ozzy in a close-up on Europa to a crossfading to the statue, and it was like, oh, wait a second, he is that statue. It's gotta be. And that's what it turned out being. And a great, excellent, smooth, you don't even notice it transition here, where when they make him into gold carbonite and he's a statue, it's like when they close the ship and then open the doors to the ship, they perfectly transition it to the timeline in the current day into them rolling him now to Lady True and the music switching to that dark tone. You can't do a transition better than that, musically and visually. So they take him out of carbonation, and Lady True gets her dig in to make her feel good, saying, the fact you took the time to spell out daughter really means a lot. Must have taken a lot to finally cave and humble yourself. So it's just hysterical of a line too, that he had to be going crazy and prisoner on a separate planet to actually give a crap to even acknowledge her as his daughter. And it was just great him seeing Bien. He's like, you cloned your mother? Jeremy Irons just kills every single beat, whether it's got to be comic, serious, or super emotional. He nails it across the board, and he's really embraced this character of Ozymandias. And she's getting that ego stroke she's wanted and that validation. I mean, it is her father. That moment comes too when he just tells her the clock she built is beautiful. So I love this next little scene that I appreciated more in my second watch, was when Lady True goes to the newsstand outside and he recognizes her and is like, wow, it's the first time you've actually come here. And he's starstruck, and she's like the current big deal. And then when Veidt goes over, he's old hat now. He's old news, and this man's informing him that nobody cares what happened to Ozymandias. That is soul crushing for someone like him. So it's such great juxtaposition there, and to think a little scene like that out, which means so much. And just more little nice touch with Lady True thinking about this from a very egotistical standpoint, as her with the newspapers, and gives them to Bien real quick, and she's like, throw those in the time capsule. So she wants all the memories of the date of her glorious moment. And nice humorous moment here with Veidt when he first sees the paper and he's like, Robert Redford is still president? So we get the glimpse now of the Millennium Clock coming over. It looks really cool. But one of my biggest problems with the finale is what they did with this Millennium Clock, because they set it up like it would be something like the Squid, in the sense of a shock factor, something that is really clever and that alters the world in its own unique way. And that's the way it's presented with the countdown in previous episodes to it launching, and her having her speech with her coworkers and talking about trauma and memories. And they set it up like it'd have a connection to that, and it really didn't. And it's really frustrating, because you just learn in this episode that Lady True's plan is basically the same plan as a 7K, but just a better plan of it. But it's the same type of plan, which was just disappointing. And that's where it actually deviate a little bit from feeling like Watchmen, because Watchmen is supposed to be more clever than that, which this whole season has been up until that point for something so important, especially at the end here. So that was really disappointing to me. It just felt dull. And that to me also led to where I got frustrated, where Lady True now became, instead of like Ozzy from the original comics, how they've been showing her, she just becomes any Marvel villain that you've seen in those movies where it's just, okay, I'm losing now, I'm frustrated, and my plan isn't that genius, and she's just the angry villain, and she becomes too much now of the tropes they kind of make fun of in the show. She just fully embraces that, which was really disappointing, especially for like the main antagonist here. The way her results came here, we've seen done 100 times over as a villain end. But now we go to this scene with the 7K, and we see the old Senator Keene is here. He's in a wheelchair, he puts a Cyclops sign up, and it was really well done how they showed like Laurie in the situation moments before the shooting happened with Cal and Angela. And what was another tease was there was this chill you had to get watching this moment where Looking Glass appears in the Rorschach mask. It's a smart thing to have him wear that because his character is so much like Rorschach. But with the music kicking in and him having the shotgun, you got really hyped like something crazy was going to go down with him. We were all waiting for him to come back. Nothing really came of that either. And I'll get more into, I feel like, how they mishandled Looking Glass in this finale as a whole. But then we see, bam, Dr. Manhattan's in this cage. He's been teleported. And a nice touch again when it transitions real quick to where Angela is. And she's interrogating one of the 7K members and where they took him. And another throw to Rorschach with her snapping his fingers, getting him to give her what she wants, just like Rorschach. So it was just a nice confirmation to everyone who's seen the similarities of her to Rorschach and Looking Glass. They both had their moment right here to show that, like, yes, they definitely have that in their souls. The black and white worldview, the seeking of truth by any means, very similar. So you see Senator Keene goes on his long-winded rant here, his ego stroke. And this made sense because he is that kind of character you can make fun of. He's the classic trope villain from the get-go. That's why it's annoying that they again did that with Lady True. But she didn't seem like she was going to be that character in the end. They just kind of doubled up here. Like, to me, the trope of her going on and on to the 7th Cavalry before she blows them up. Why did she do that too? Why did she fall in that same stupidity of just talking? I know it relates to Veidt, but you already did it here at Keene, so it just felt like too much of the same. And that it would work so well with like a cartoony villain like Keene, but not so much with Lady True. But in Keene's speech, it's cool how they explain that the night of the White Knight, they figured out who Dr. Manhattan was because he zapped one of the 7K to New Mexico. Oh, and the man thong Keene's got going on is absolutely hysterical. But I do also wish there was a better tie-in here with Laurie to Dr. Manhattan, because this is a huge reunion and it was kind of lackluster. And her character as a whole started off so well. She was the best written character when she was introduced, and it started fizzling out as time went on, because she just became joke after joke, every single line, just the comic relief to a point of it was getting nauseating. And I know she's supposed to be like the comedian because she's his daughter, but all right, there is a point where you're beating a dead horse. And so Angela gets to the warehouse now, warns Keene, like, don't flip that switch. Basically, this is all a booby trap of Lady True, and it will just mess everything up. But he hits the switch, and then everyone's teleported outside, and then Lady True has all their guns pulled away, and she says to Angela, I'm fulfilling my promise to your grandpa. He gave me your husband, and I'm getting him justice. Obviously explaining why Will Reeves said to Lady True in an earlier episode, Angela's gonna hate me because he gave up Dr. Manhattan. But to justify Will's actions, which we learn later on, and we learned really in the last episode, is that this was all Dr. Manhattan's plan and had told him to do that. However, what I did like was Lady True in this speech that she goes on and on. They even reference her like, all right, just do it, Miss Crawford says, which is again a great throw to Rorschach before he died, saying that same line. And she kills him, so it was great to see all these white supremacists killed. But you see Lady True's ego really screwed her here as well, because her misstep was showing off what she did to Keene and all that mush coming down. And that was Dr. Manhattan's key to teleport Ozzy, Laurie, and Looking Glass. So this is where it turned a little bit for me, because when they get in the office, Ozzy goes, we're here to save the day, of course. This is where it was weird, because as Lady True's becoming this kind of boring, by-the-books villain, all of a sudden, Adrian Veidt's becoming, like, likable too much, in a way. And he's just coming to save the day. I love, though, when we're seeing Dr. Manhattan now In the cage, though, and Lady True's yelling at him about what he did, teleporting them, that he is saying lines from the comic, and again, being everywhere all at once. Really good job there. And he tells Angela, I didn't want to send you. I don't want to be alone when I die. Don't touch the light. And she's like, John, come back. Where are you? And he's like, I'm in every moment. We're all together all at once. I love the little flash of them meeting and stuff from episode 8. Really touching. Great acting, as always, by Regina King. She's a master. And Yaya here did awesome as well. Really powerful scene. Lindelof is a sucker for the love story, so that was a nice little send-off there. So Looking Glass now, we sees now all of Adrian's just madhouse here of toys. This stuff that ruined his life. And it's funny, because I didn't even think of this during the show, but how he mentions, wait, Lori, you knew about the squid? And she didn't tell anyone. That was just so interesting. That caught me completely off guard. And the great line by Ozzy here to Looking Glass, saying, I saved humanity, you ignorant hayseed. So Ozzy thinks up to have the baby squids frozen and drop them on Lady True to prevent her from getting Dr. Manhattan's powers. And Laurie's like, well, how do you know she's not going to use these powers for good like she said? And he says, because she's clearly a raging narcissist whose ambition knows no limits. It's hubris, literal hubris. Great writing there. And it's just great tying those two together and how he sees so much of his daughter in him now and how he says it takes one to know one. And it worked just as a narration of him talking with showing Lady True and that awesome shot of the cross there, Jesus being the savior and her thinking she's that type of savior for the world. And then when it backfires and the millennial clock falls on her, it was such a brilliant shot where the cross falls when the clock falls down on her. Just perfect stuff right there. And I really did like the squid going through her hand there too, because it was just like, again, the nails on the cross through Jesus' hand. So just some strong symbolism all around. But was the squid being frozen coming down, would it really cause that much damage to the clock itself? I don't know. I just really thought in this finale we were going to get something epic in the sense of something that would leave everyone talking about it. And like the original Watchmen, which he's done so good at, is kind of taking what the original Watchmen did and making it his own. And here I thought it was a perfect opportunity to finish it off like a Watchmen type ending, and it wasn't, which was the biggest frustration for me. I thought there'd be something that happened that everyone would be talking about after, debating, like the end of Watchmen does, where you're debating who was in the right. What did I just see? I'm not used to some of this. That just didn't happen here. So Angela now goes into Dreamland Theater, sees Will Reeves and her kids, and this is just amazing acting by Louis Gossett Jr. here, and how this all wrapped back around to this first scene in the show we saw of him as a kid sitting there watching this film and seeing Bass Reeves, the black marshal from Oklahoma. That was his hero. And this was what he saw, he said, before his world would end. That was such good writing there too. It was very emotional. And he's like, Bass hit his face, so I did too. And he's like, you feel what I felt when I wore the hood. And she says, anger? He said, that's what I thought too, but it was really fear and hurt. That's his like revelation now at this age. You can't heal under a mask, Angela. Wounds need air. So that's your main underlying theme of the whole season right there, that you know the writers' room and Lindelof thought of from the start. What was their main message? That is it, that we all hide behind masks all the time. And like going back to Ozzy said in the beginning, and people always think it's from anger, but it really is rooted from fear and hurt, and that it's the wrong way to address it, and that hiding behind a mask won't actually fix things. So that's kind of where the message went. Really, really good stuff. And this scene was definitely my favorite scene of the finale and felt so earned as a season to get to this part. And he says, you can't make an omelet without breaking a couple eggs. And he says Dr. Manhattan said that to him, and you would understand it when the time is right, setting up for her connecting the dots later on in the episode, which we'll get to. And she invites him now to stay over her place. So it's like the first time she's really not hostile to her grandpa anymore. This is a great scene all around. And again, I like to say this compliment, but this scene is a scene you would play for an acting class. Just watch two people give 150% and really understand their characters. So we see now Veidt has Archie, Night Owl's ship, which was awesome to see. But Lori, in a twist of events, arrests him. And she has a good line where she's like, people keep saying the world's gonna end, but it never seems to happen. So kind of calling out Adrian for his defense mechanism, where all he says his justification of why he mass murdered people, that the world's gonna end. But she's like, is it really though? And he says to her, you kept this secret the whole time, and now you're gonna basically betray him? And she says, people change over time, Adrian. And then the wrench comes in, referencing a line from the comic, but again, this was just too much to me. It was disappointing, it felt goofy, felt like any other superhero movie or Scooby-Doo. So I love, though, when we see Angela and her family leaving the theater, we see the Dr. M on the sign. That was pretty cool. And Will comes in the house. He says Dr. M was a good man, but considering what he could do, he could have done a little more. So that goes to the theme too about God and people with superpowers. What would they really do? And that's just a Watchmen theme from the comic. And would you do any better? It's just interesting to start thinking about that. And that's what makes the character of Dr. Manhattan so interesting. So Angela sees the eggs from the last episode that are on the ground. And I called that because I said in my review last week that keep an eye on those eggs. He was floating, that dropped and cracked. They just made such a big point of that. And there was one egg left. And this all goes back now to their dialogue about transferring his powers. Would this theoretically make her walk on water? So she goes to the pool, like they've done so well with all the Dr. Manhattan scenes. They put a filter on the camera and they make it a blue tone, which looks awesome. And she eats the egg. She goes to step on the water. We don't see what happens. And a cover of the famous Beatles songs, I Am the Walrus, starts playing. And that goes to the song title, See How They Fly. And when they say I Am the Eggman with the theme of eggs. So perfect song to end the season. And I love that it's an Inception ending here, just where it's spinning, you don't know if it's going to fall. Same thing. I think that worked perfectly for a show like this. You didn't really need to see if she would become Dr. Manhattan or not. I think that would have just been too distracting in a sense and taken away from everything we're trying to learn from the themes here. And it sets and leaves, a door maybe for a season 2. But again, Lindelof said he's only going to do a season 2 if something great comes to him. And right now, he has no idea what he would do with that. So I don't think he's in any rush to just wield something out. And that's what I love about Lindelof so far. He's never sold his soul. He's only doing stuff he actually believes in. So if HBO's got to be patient here, it's a huge hit with on-demand numbers. They're going to be pushy about getting a season 2 out, but please just give him time to figure something out that he believes in. Don't force this, and don't give it to someone else. Please, I'd rather than not have another season. So overall, I'm giving this finale a 9.3, and I wish it was one of the best ones. My favorite episode being the one before, A God Walks into A-Bar, but the problem for me with this episode, again, was just the millennial clock disappointments, the feeling out of tone, which was so consistent, the tone in this show, until this moment with Lady True becoming this just trope villain all around. And you just thought it'd be more clever and causing more conversation about the show. It's great conversation with themes, but just about the show and what's going on, it didn't continue that way. And you can even tell just going on right at the next day, it wasn't the same vibe. Yeah, it wrapped up, but it wasn't like that making you think a lot after effect that every episode had before, and how the comic had ended, giving you that effect. But my favorite episode, A God Walks in A-Bar, is number 1 for me. The Looking Glass episode was great. Lori's episode was great. And definitely second best for me was Hooded Justice reveal episode. Just awesome television. And that just wraps around for me to give this season as a whole a 9.5. It's definitely up there. I'd say top 10 all-time season of a show for sure. And Lindelof is just cementing himself as a legend here with Lost. And then him perfecting Lost in a way with Leftovers. And now him doing something like Leftovers and Lost, but in a different type of genre. Something that had so much pressure to it. He did such a good job. The whole writing staff, all the directors, the actors, just really, and the music was like my favorite thing here by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, so I hope they get awards for this. I hope Regina King gets another award because she's just a master at acting, and I hope Jeremy Irons gets for supporting. I think he deserves it for this performance in particular, and Nicole Castle for her directing on A God Walks into A-Bar. Let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you kind of like it? Anything you want to say, just be civil with each other. Be civil with me, please. We're all cool here. It's just fun debate. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be reviewing The Outsider on HBO. I'm reviewing His Dark Materials at the moment and Servant from Apple TV+. And please follow me at Steve Varley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.